Hey guys, it's Bales. I'm looking at our NFL player models tool for 2015, and I wanted to show you quickly how to make a model and just some of the stats that we have in the models. So the way that you create a model is by rating different stats using our sliders on the left. You have 100 points that you can use. You don't have to use all 100 points. What really matters is the relationship between these different factors. But you move the sliders as you'd like. If you are at 100 points, you have to move one down to move another up. But you can move them as you'd like. Click update, and the plus minus will update. That one didn't change much. And the plus minus is the historic points above or below expectation. So the way that we do this, and the reason that FantasyLabs is so valuable in my opinion, is because we give you this ability to back test models immediately, so you don't need to wait a year to see if your model works or to see if your approach is going to be a profitable one. You can see it in 2 seconds, and that plus minus is the points above or below expectation for the top 5% of players in your model historically, and the plus minus is adjusted for cost. So for example, Joe Flacco in week 1 cost $6,700. Historically, players in that price range have scored 17.1 points on DraftKings. Drew Brees at $1,300 more would be expected to score 19.8 points. So if each of those quarterbacks were to put up that exact number, their plus minus for the game would be 0. Anything above it will be a positive plus minus, anything below obviously negative. And so you're not always looking for the highest possible plus minus, but it's obviously a good thing. And if you hover over plus minus, you can also see upside, consistency, and dud ratings for your model in those games, which basically gives you an idea of how much exposure that particular model has had to various outcomes. So obviously looking more for upside in tournaments, more for consistency in cash games. So you can click the ratings tab here to look at all the different stats that we have in an explanation, and you can also remove anything you don't like. So if you don't want Vegas score in there, you can click that. Everything will disappear on the left. I have all of them listed now to run through them. So bargain rating is basically a measure of the difference in site pricing. We know historically how sites have priced players, and so we look at that difference and then compare it to a particular player's difference in site pricing to give you an idea of where he's the cheapest. I think it's really, really valuable, especially in NFL. You'll notice that it's a really powerful tool. It's arguably the most powerful slider that we have. That's why we put it at the top. But even outside of just predicting value, it's really good to make sure you're getting exposure to players where they're the cheapest, and so you want that bargain rating to be very high. So you can see that Drew Brees in week 1 has a 58% bargain rating, which means he's roughly priced the same across the sites, whereas Joe Flacco has an 89% bargain rating. That means he's in the 89th percentile in terms of how big that difference is. And because it's higher when we're looking at DraftKings, it means he's a much better value at DraftKings in week 1. And if you want Flacco exposure, if you want to have Flacco in your lineups, you're probably better off doing that at DraftKings because he's cheapest, and you leave yourself more room for error in the event that you have an assessment error. So we have that Vegas score, which is mostly the total, but also incorporates the spread and public betting percentages. Defensive unit rating, this is the same thing as in our trends area, the opponent plus minus, which is the points above or below expectation for a particular position against the defense. So we look at how many points over the past 16 games a defense, with the most recent games being weighted more heavily, that a defense has allowed to a particular position, and that's adjusted for cost. So it's really, really valuable. It's a stat that we created this year, and I like it quite a bit. It seems to be very predictive, and it's a really good way to adjust for opponent strength. So if a defense has played 4 outstanding quarterbacks recently and given up a bunch of points, their plus minus allowed might still not be that bad because probably those quarterbacks cost a lot, and so they were supposed to score more points. So it's adjusted for that opponent's strength, which I think is really important. Projected points per dollar, this is what you see on a bunch of other sites. almost every site, this is just how they rate players. I think it's a little bit fragile to use on its own. We have it as points per salary here. It's the number of points per $1,000 of salary, but still a valuable component to add into your models, and you can weight it as much or as little as you'd like. Median projection, which is just the most likely outcome, which we have here. Projected plus minus, that is basically you take that projection, subtract the implied points based on their salary, and that's what's left there. So you can see Breeze, we're projecting 3.5 points higher than his implied projection based on his salary, which basically just means we think he's underpriced. Projected ceiling, projected floor. We're projecting players. I think this is another really valuable component of what we're doing. We're projecting ceiling and floor based on predictors of volatility. So looking at things like for quarterbacks, it might be their average target length or how often they throw the ball downfield. So Flacco throws the ball downfield way more than Drew Brees. You'd expect him to have a wider range of potential outcomes because of that. And you can see that he basically does. And you can also click on a player to see that range of outcomes and try to visualize that. Also, all of these three projections are editable, so if you click on them, you can edit them if you don't agree with what we have. Pro Trends rating, that incorporates obviously our Pro Trends. These are the number of trends or angles that a player has on him that have historically led to value on a particular site. Also, I think pretty predictive, so you can weight those as much as you'd like. Plus minus is a player's historic plus minus that he has created. Monthly salary change, really, really important. When a player's salary drops, but there hasn't been a change in role, it typically leads to a ton of value. So along with bargain rating, I think month salary change is a good way to just get players when they're cheapest. And it seems to be very important. So this will be a big component of my models. Consistency, how often a player reaches his expectations. So just a percentage mark, how often. So Breeze in week 1 would need to reach 19.83 points or more to be considered a consistent player for that week. Long-term value is just overall we're trying to just for player quality over overall player quality. So if you want better players coming up to the top of your models over maybe strict value, you might weight that more. Upside, how often a player is reaching 2x his salary-based expectation. And then weather, I actually think we're throwing out that component, so don't even worry about that. So you weigh all these factors as you'd like using the sliders. Click update. We immediately backtest for you. You can see how quickly it happens. That I changed. I moved bargain rating down there, I believe, and so that changes the model. It changed the upside and consistency ratings. It also changes all of the player ratings. So if we move this down, for example, I would imagine you'll see some changes. You can see some changes in how the quarterbacks are rated. You have to do a different model for each position. Obviously, there's different factors. And then when you have a model that you like, you can click the optimizer if you prefer, and it'll optimize a lineup around your ratings. So that's the basis behind our player models. Definitely fool around with it. Look at all the different, see how high you can get the plus minus. It's not the only thing that matters for sure, but it is a really quality way to rate players as efficiently as possible.